Hey guys, Brian here from 5 to Go. A couple weeks ago, we had a blowout on our motorhome while driving at 65 miles an hour on the interstate. This is one of my greatest fears, and I want to talk about that today. But I'm starting in here because apparently we are in the loudest campground that you could possibly pick. There is a very small little airport here, and every plane that takes off is incredibly loud. So I will do what I can while editing this to make it not crazy loud for you guys, but I am kind of limited, so here we go. So first things first, what happened and where? This was in West Virginia on I-79. We were driving north, and we had just left a campground a little while before, and was just driving along, minding my own business, and the driver's side tire on my motorhome decided to blow. I have heard absolute horror stories about what can happen when this happens on a steer tire. Now, a steer tire, if you don't know that term, is any of the tires on the front axle, because those are the ones you steer with. And what I've heard and seen video of that can happen is those blow completely out, that corner digs into the ground, and then you just kind of go in that direction, either across a median or off the side of the road or what have you. So luckily ours kept a lot of rubber on it when it blew. So I was just driving along and I heard a hiss, and then I heard a pop, and then I got that normal like flat tire like wubba 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 sound and feeling. So it took me over into the lane next to me. Luckily no one was next to me. Aaron was following in the Jeep behind because I hadn't installed the towing gear on it yet because we had just bought it. I was able to just kind of ride the brakes and slow down and get off the right side of the road. We were on a really nasty blind curve. So all of the traffic coming behind us was coming from the passenger side really and curving around and coming past us. So you didn't even know we were on the side of the road until you were 100 yards behind us, and we had just enough room on the shoulder to be off the road, but there was a guardrail, so I got as close as I could to still be able to open the steps like that. It was not an ideal situation, and to make it even worse, it was the tire on the roadside that needed to be replaced. So the first thing that I did is I called my roadside service, and I actually have Good Sam, and they weren't able to help, really, is the end of that story, because we were in the middle of kind of a rural area. There's really not much there. We were between two stops on the interstate. One of them had no services, and the next one, everyone that I looked at, the tire shop we eventually ended up getting a tire from, they didn't even have a website or a phone number listed on Google. So I'm not surprised that Good Sam wasn't able to reach out to anybody. But luckily, when we called the state police and said that we were on this blind curve and we wanted some more visibility, they sent a trooper out. Super, super nice guy. And he parked his car way back, turned his lights on, kind of angled out so people would know that something was happening up on the right as they came around this curve. Before we had even heard back from Good Sam that they weren't able to reach anybody, he had already talked to a wrecker crew with his police radio because they don't really bother with phones in that area. The first guy that showed up, he didn't hear the message quite properly. He heard RV and he heard Motorhome, but he thought it was like a little Class C or something. So he shows up in what I would call a normal tow truck, and that was not going to do the job. But the guy was super, super nice. He contacted another wrecker crew who could come out with like a proper truck wrecker. And he didn't have to do this, but he stood there and he waited with us and made sure everything was fine, and the other wrecker crew got there before he left. So super awesome. The next wrecker crew gets there, they're in a big proper wrecker, and they start looking at the damage on the tire and the wheel. Now, because the wheel and the tire were completely blown apart, they were not able to attach to us and tow us to the next exit. When he told us this, we were just like, what do we do now? Like, how do we get off of this interstate? So what ended up happening is he gave us a contact number for this tire shop at the next exit. I was able to call them. They have the tires in stock, which is actually kind of a nice thing about motorhomes, is these big, huge tires here are the same size tires that they use on a lot of commercial trucks. So it's a very common tire size. The problem is when the wrecker guy, I believe his name was Mike, when he took the wheel off of the RV, the wheel was damaged. Like from the outside, it did not look like the wheel was damaged, but as soon as he got that off and we rolled it around the front, the inside of the wheel had two huge like bumps in it, and Mike thinks that we ran over something or something happened to cause those dents, and then the tire basically lost pressure and off it went. So what originally I thought was going to be a relatively easy, take the wheel to the tire place, put a new tire on it, bring it back and put the tire and wheel back on, became a bigger issue because now we didn't have a wheel to put a tire on. So I call back down to the tire place. I'm like, not only do I need a tire, but I need a wheel. And he was like, all right, I don't know if I have anything, but I'll look around. And about 5 minutes later, he comes back. He says one of his guys found a steel wheel with our, bolt pattern and hub size and wheel size and all that out around the side of the shop. And he would get a tire mounted on that. We just had to come down and pick it up. So I hop in the truck with the wrecker guy's son. We drive up to the next exit, pop into the tire shop, and they end up mounting this tire on the ugliest wheel I have ever seen in my entire life, but it works. It's just a steel wheel. It's basically, I think it came off of a bigger truck, and it was the inside of a dually set of wheels. So it is caked in dirt, nasty, beat up, but it's holding a tire. That tire is holding air, and that's really all I could ask for. So we threw that in the back of the truck, drive back out to where the RV is on the side of the road, and Mike is able to get that wheel and tire back on the RV, and we're able to get back on our way. So we had a bunch of things working against us here. Not only were we on this blind curve, but it was also a tire on the driver's side, which means all of the work that had to be done on this wheel and tire were basically in a lane of traffic on an interstate at 70 miles an hour. So really not the best place to get a flat, and certainly not the best side of the RV to get a flat on as well. Now, they say in all of the manuals and all of the literature and all of the everything that you are not supposed to lift a motorhome high enough to bring the wheel off the ground. And you're also not supposed to do anything about like removing wheels and tires and all of that if all you're up on is the leveling jacks. We didn't have the luxury of following the rules, so unfortunately that's what we had to do. So I jacked the motorhome up as high as I could so he could get the nasty broken wheel and tire off and get the fresh one back on. So it was a really crazy situation, but it ended up being great. The state trooper was great. The first tow truck guy that came out was great. Mike and his family running that wrecker were amazing. The tire shop guy was great, and he doesn't even know it because the tire was not in a ridiculous price, and he didn't even charge me for the wheel, probably because it looked like it had been around the block about 8,000 times. Mike says from what he saw of that wheel that he took off, that he's pretty much convinced that we hit something and that it wasn't the age of the tire, because all the tires on this rig aren't even 4 years old, and they just now, I think one of our most recent travel days, we crossed 40,000 miles. So these tires are nowhere near the end of their life. There's a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to when to replace tires, especially on RVs, because they sit for such long periods of time. So more often than not, you're gonna go by years rather than miles. But from everything I have heard from tire people and from other RVers, more seasoned RVers, is, when a tire gets about 4, 5, 6 years old is when you want to start thinking about replacing it. So my tires aren't even 4 years old, and they look great, and they're holding up great. Sidewalls look good. Tire guys have looked at them. So long story short, we don't think it was a failure of the tire. We think it was some kind of impact that damaged the wheel and then took the tire with it. Mike said every tire that he has seen that shreds apart the way that that one did indicates an impact of some sort. So that's a little more comforting. There's 7 other tires that are from that same batch. They've been fine for the last 1,000 or so miles. We've done a lot of driving in the past couple weeks. The main thing right now is that steel wheel is hideous, but it's doing the job. So I'm kind of okay with it for the rest of this trip. And once we get back down to Florida, I will find a replacement aluminum wheel that looks like the other ones do. And we'll probably look into getting all of the other tires replaced before we go anywhere next year. So the tire exploded and did a lot of damage to the stuff around it. Just absolute chaos when one of these things explodes. Now, on the front, there's really not much around that tire, but it hit everything that it possibly could. So right behind that tire is the bay that holds our Aqua Hot, which is our water heater. The tire completely shredded the front metal compartment wall. It basically peeled it back like if you were rolling up a top on a can of sardines. It was basically like that. ripped all of that apart. I thought it had damaged the tank that holds there's this like glycol solution that is AquaHot uses to move hot water through things. I don't know exactly how it works. I thought that had been damaged because it was way down below the low mark. So at the next stop on our trip, I was able to find a tech who was certified to work on AquaHot systems, which was awesome. And she also was able to work on absolutely everything else as well. So had her come out, she took a look at the AquaHot. The reservoir was not broken. However, the tire had hit one of the water lines in front of the tire that went up to the front two heaters that are in the motorhome. They're kind of on either side of the driver's and passenger seat. So the tire had damaged one of those pipes, punched a hole in it, and all of that glycol antifreeze stuff had drained out of there. So she ended up having to cut a piece out of that hose, patch in a new hose, and then run through this whole process of refilling the glycol solution, bleeding the air out of the system. Like, she had to come inside and find the high point of that system, which happened to be a heater that was right next to the bathroom. She had to take that out and do a bunch of wiggling and get air out and run the pump and all. It was a huge to do, but she was amazing and got that fixed. She also unrolled the metal panel wall and put a couple screws in it. I still have to do a bit more to it to make it weather tight again. There was some wiring that got hit. It looked like 12-volt wiring that probably ran that heater that was up by the driver's seat. The tire exploding also hit the filler neck. A piece of tire must have come up and just walloped that filler neck because it moved it rearward so hard that it dislodged itself from where it was screwed in and had 3 screws in to come through that panel behind the door. And it also moved so hard that it destroyed the cap that was on that filler neck, like the spin-on gas cap, completely destroyed it. Now, luckily, it left the threaded part inside the hose, so all of that stuff that had been destroyed off did not go down into the tank. And I still have to deal with that. I still have to figure out how to remove the threaded part of that without the rest of the cap. But that's a problem for future Brian. So she was able to move all of that back into place, get that screwed back in, and I will figure out the cap thing later because I can fill from this side over here, so I've been able to refill with no issues whatsoever. It destroyed the wiring for the under coach lights on the driver's side. Really don't care about that. I'll figure that out later. Yeah, that was kind of the list of things that were damaged. So the wheel was completely toast. The tire was completely toast. It took out wiring for the heater. It did a bunch of damage to the AquaHot tubing. It did a bunch of damage to the front edge of the storage bay that had the AquaHot in it. End of the day, could have been a lot worse. Terrible situation, but it could have been a lot worse. I was able to stay on the road. I was able to control it. We were able to find a replacement tire and wheel within a couple hours. We were able to get along up our route to safety not long after this happened. So one thing I know we're going to get questions about is whether or not I had a TPMS system running and whether it alerted me or not. Now, I do have TPMS on this rig. I use TST because I think they are the best that is out there. There are a couple other companies that are out there that you probably hear more often. They're not very great. The one that comes to mind is Tire Minder. I had a Tire Minder on the Bounder. It was nothing but trouble, had issues with syncing, did not report any issues quickly enough. Like, even if you unscrewed one of the valve caps to put fresh air in, it wouldn't alert you that it had dropped pressure for 30 or 45 seconds. And in my book, that is not anywhere near fast enough. So on this rig, I have TST running. I will have links to the exact system below. So that was installed and running. It was showing normal pressures. It was showing normal temperatures. Everything was within range. Everything was within spec. And it did not alert me until I heard that hiss and then the pop. And it was like, you have no pressure, or like a big jump or a big drop in pressure. So it wasn't a slow leak. It was an impact. It was like a catastrophic failure. So TPMS didn't really save my bacon in this particular instance, but if you have a slow leak or something overheating or whatever, you need to know about that because that will be a problem. The only way to know about that is with a proper TPMS. So if you don't have one, please go buy one and install one. If you have a truck and trailer, get it on all your truck tires, put it on your trailer tires. They have systems with enough sensors for all of that. If you have a motorhome and a Toad, they have systems that do that many tires. Like, it's all out there. It's all worth it. It's 100% worth the money because a tire failure can do a lot of damage and it can be really, really bad. So if it's a preventable situation, you want to be able to prevent it, and a TPMS will allow you to do that. Now, in motorhomes, we don't carry spares. They're too big, they're too heavy, there's nowhere to put them. On smaller vehicles, on trailers, on fifth wheels, they'll be tucked up underneath. On travel trailers, you'll often see tires on the back. If you have one of those, make sure you have all the tools that will allow you to change that tire. You want to have a way to inflate these tires. So I will have links to everything I like down below. I like the Viair 400P RV. It is a fantastic pump. I use it for RV tires. It'll go to, I think it's 150 PSI. You also will need jacks. You will need tools to get lug nuts off. You will need all of that stuff. So please make sure right now, before you have another travel day, that you have everything you need to be able to change a flat tire. There's actually a discussion going on about this on our Discord server right now. One of our road runners had a trailer tire on his car trailer blow. And we were just talking about make sure you have a jack, make sure you know where to put the jack, make sure you have the tools to get the lug nuts off. If they are really tight lug nuts, make sure you have like a breaker bar to give you more leverage to get those lug nuts off. It's a lot of stuff, and it's just one of those possibility things. It's a lot of gear to carry around for something that may not ever happen. If it doesn't ever happen, fantastic. If it does happen, you'll be prepared. If you have any questions about how to deal with flat tires, change trailer tires, deal with any of that stuff, hop on our Discord server, 5togo.com/Discord. Great community in there, a couple thousand people, RVers of all different stripes. It is what I think is the best RV community on the internet. So I think that about wraps it up here. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, or again, get on Discord. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Please travel safe. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. Have a good one.